They say the most dangerous woman in any room is the one who has already decided to leave but hasn't told you yet. Brennan Holt thought he had married a sweet, soft-spoken accountant who cried at commercials and kept lavender sachets in every drawer. He thought Nora was the kind of woman who would forgive anything, absorb anything, endure anything, because she loved him and because she had nowhere else to go. He was wrong on every count. And by the time he figured that out, she was already gone. Not just from the house, but from the life he thought he owned. This is the story of how one man spent 3 years lying to his wife, and how his wife spent 6 months making sure that when she finally walked out, he would have nothing left to lie about. The night it all started, Brennan didn't even bother to come home. He texted at 10:47 p.m. A single line, "Client dinner running long, don't wait up." Nora was sitting at the kitchen island in their condo on the 14th floor of the Meridian building in downtown Nashville. She had made salmon and roasted potatoes. The candles had burned down to stumps. It was their 3rd anniversary. She didn't cry. She didn't call him back. She wrapped the salmon in foil, put it in the refrigerator, and blew out what was left of the candles. Then she picked up his phone charger from the counter. He always forgot it when he traveled, and on impulse she checked the notification that had just lit up the old iPad still connected to his Apple ID. The message was from someone named C. Wren. It said, "Miss you already. Tonight was perfect." Nora put the iPad face down on the counter. She stood there for a long time, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic 14 stories below. She thought about screaming. She thought about calling him. She thought about throwing the salmon through the window. Instead, she went to her laptop. She opened a new private browsing tab, and she started searching for a divorce attorney. That was the first night. There would be 183 more before she was ready. To understand what Nora did next, you have to understand who Nora Holt actually was, not who Brennan thought she was. Nora had grown up the second of 4 kids in a single-income household in Clarksville, Tennessee. Her mother worked double shifts at a hospital laundry. Her father left when she was 9 and never came back. By the time Nora was 13, she was doing the family taxes on a kitchen table while her mother slept. She got a full scholarship to Vanderbilt, graduated top of her class in accounting, and went to work for a mid-sized private equity firm, where she spent her days reading financial statements that most people couldn't decipher with a map. Brennan had met her at a fundraiser 5 years ago. He was charming and broad-shouldered, a commercial real estate developer, with a smile that made everyone in the room feel like they were the most important person in it. He had swept her up in 8 months of dinners and long weekends in Charleston, and one very expensive ring. She had said yes because she loved him, and because she thought she had finally found someone who saw her. What Brennan had actually seen was a woman who would not cause trouble. He was right for 3 years. She kept the condo immaculate. She handled the joint finances. She attended every client dinner on his arm, shook every hand, laughed at every golf anecdote. She had put her own career on hold when his business expanded to Memphis, because someone had to manage the relocation, and it was implicitly understood that the someone would be her. She had been a logistical miracle in his life, invisible and indispensable. And when she found the messages on that iPad, the first thing she did was make a list. Not a list of grievances, a list of assets. She knew their finances better than Brennan did, because she handled them. She knew that the Meridian condo was held, in both their names, but that the down payment had come entirely from her savings before the marriage. Something she had never thought to protect legally, because she had trusted him. She knew his development company, Holt & Partners, had 2 investors who were also close personal friends of his. She knew their joint account held $118,000, and that Brennan moved money through it carelessly, the way people do when they assume their partner isn't paying attention. She had been paying attention for 3 years. She just hadn't known yet what she was paying attention for. The next morning, she made an appointment with an attorney named Patricia Greaves, a family law specialist with an unsmiling face and a reputation for being deeply unpleasant to opposing counsel. Nora paid the consultation fee in cash from an account Brennan didn't know she still had, a small personal account from before the marriage that she had simply never mentioned and that he had never thought to ask about. She told Patricia everything: the message, the timeline, the down payment on the condo, the fact that she had been keeping household records, because she was an accountant, and she kept records of everything, out of habit. Patricia looked at her over her reading glasses for a long moment. "Most people come in here wanting to know how fast they can get out," she said, "but I have a feeling you're not most people." "I want to know how to do this right," Nora said. "I want to make sure there is nothing left that he can argue about when we're done." Patricia smiled. It was not a warm smile. "How long can you wait?" As long as it takes. What followed was the quietest war anyone had ever fought inside a 14-story luxury condo. Nora did not change a single thing about her behavior. She still made coffee in the morning. She still left his dry cleaning on the hook by the door. She still asked about his projects over dinner and listened attentively while he talked about square footage and lease negotiations, and the new mixed-use development in Germantown that was going to be, he said, his legacy. She also began, very quietly, to untangle herself from the life they had built together. She opened a separate savings account at a bank she had never used before, a small credit union on the east side of town. Into it, she deposited a portion of each paycheck. She had recently gone back to work part-time for a consulting firm. And not once did Brennan notice because Brennan did not look at her finances. He looked at the joint account, confirmed it was healthy, and moved on. She contacted a real estate attorney, separately from Patricia, to review the documentation on the condo. The news was good. Because the down payment had come from her premarital funds, and she had a bank record to prove it, a Tennessee court would likely award her a larger share of the equity. She began gathering those records methodically, scanning them and saving them to a cloud account with a new email address he didn't know existed. She moved her jewelry and her grandmother's silverware to a storage unit she rented under her maiden name, Nora Aldrich. She told Brennan she was decluttering for a design refresh, which was exactly the kind of thing she sometimes did. And he nodded without looking up from his phone. She also hired a private investigator named Roy Sutter, a retired detective who worked out of an office above a dry cleaner on Charlotte Avenue and who charged a flat rate and asked no unnecessary questions. Roy delivered his findings in a manila envelope 6 weeks later. The woman's name was Courtney Wren. She was 26. She worked in the marketing department of a hospitality group that Brennan's firm had been courting as a commercial tenant. She and Brennan had been meeting at a hotel near the airport, always on Tuesday and Thursday evenings, always between 8 and 11 p.m. Roy had the receipts, and some of them were business expenses. That last part made Nora very still. She took the envelope home. She sat at her kitchen island, the same one where she had eaten the anniversary salmon alone, and she went through every page. Then she called Patricia. He's been expensing her, Nora said. Define expensing. Hotel stays, dinners, wine, a spa day at the Hermitage, all billed to the company card as client entertainment. There was a pause on Patricia's end. Who are the investors in Holt & Partners? Gerald Fitch and a man named Donovan Searle. Donovan is the money. Gerald is the relationship. Do either of them know about the affair? No. What do they know about the company's financials? Nora looked at the expense records in her hands. Less than I do, she said. She waited 3 more months. Not because she needed more evidence, but because she needed to be sure that every piece was in place. She transferred her most important documents to Patricia's office. She identified a friend from college, Renata Corso, who lived in Atlanta and had offered her the guest room a dozen times over the years without ever meaning anything by it. She booked a one-way plane ticket to Atlanta under her own name and did not hide it. If Brennan found it, she would say she was visiting Renata for a long weekend. He would not check because he never did. She told Renata the truth, not all of it. Enough, Renata said. How can I help? And Nora told her. The morning she left, it was a Thursday in March. Brennan had a full day of site visits and was out of the house by 7. Nora waited until his truck turned out of the parking garage. Then she made a single phone call. 4 hours later, a moving company she had booked under Renata's name arrived with 2 trucks. She was not taking everything. She didn't want everything. She had made a list, precise and unsentimental, of what was hers. The furniture she had brought from her previous apartment, her grandmother's dining table, the artwork she had selected and paid for, her office equipment, her personal files, the kitchen items that had been wedding gifts from her side of the family. The movers worked efficiently. She had a floor plan taped to the refrigerator with each item labeled and color-coded, because she was an accountant and that was how she operated. By 2 in the afternoon the condo was half empty. The spaces where her things had been were very visible, which was intentional. She left Brennan's belongings exactly where they were. His suits in the closet, his golf clubs in the hall, his coffee mug with the chipped handle that he refused to throw away. She left all of it in a half-empty apartment that would feel, when he walked in that evening, like a mouth with half its teeth missing. On the kitchen counter, the island where she had eaten that anniversary dinner alone, she left an envelope. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. It was not a letter. It was a legal document. A notice of pending divorce proceedings, signed and dated, with Patricia Greaves listed as her attorney of record. Clipped to it was a photocopy of one hotel receipt from Roy's file. Just one. The Marriott, February 14th, Valentine's Day. Brennan had told her he was in Memphis at a zoning meeting. She walked out of the condo at 2:47 p.m. She took the elevator to the parking garage. She got in her car, a 4-year-old Volvo that was in her name only because Brennan had considered it beneath him. She drove to the airport. She turned her phone off when she reached the terminal. Brennan walked into the condo at 6:30 p.m. He stood in the entryway for a full minute, just looking. The living room was wrong, the proportions of it, the light. He thought at first that she had moved the furniture, that she was rearranging again, one of her weekend projects. But the couch was gone. The 2 chairs she'd brought from her old apartment were gone. The dining table, her grandmother's table, was gone. He walked from room to room. Her closet was empty. The guest room that doubled as her home office held only the desk she had left, because it had been built in and wasn't going anywhere. The bathroom held only his things. He found the envelope on the kitchen island. He read the legal notice. He turned it over, looking for more. He read it again. Then he saw the hotel receipt clipped to the back, and he understood that this was not a negotiation. He called her immediately. The phone went straight to voicemail. He called again. He texted, "Nora, where are you? Call me right now." He texted, "We need to talk about this. This is not how adults handle things." He texted, "Nora, I am not going to beg, but I deserve to at least have a conversation." He did not get a response, because her phone was off and she was somewhere above Kentucky, looking at clouds through a small oval window and feeling, for the first time in 3 years, completely and utterly weightless. Brennan's first call, after he stopped getting voicemail, was to his business partner Gerald. "Have you heard from Nora?" he asked. Gerald had not. He had, however, heard from Donovan Searle an hour earlier with some questions about company expenses that Gerald hadn't been able to answer. Something about client entertainment charges that didn't match any active clients in the system. Brennan went cold. He opened his laptop and pulled up the company's financial records. The surface-level ones, the ones he managed. What he found there, or rather what he couldn't find, was the beginning of a very long night. Nora had not sabotaged the company's finances. She was not a vindictive person, not in that way. But she had, over the past several months, quietly documented every irregularity she'd found. And there were many, because Brennan had been sloppy in the precise way that people are sloppy when they believe no one capable of reading the numbers is watching. She had compiled everything into a report, organized by date and transaction type, and she had sent it to Donovan Searle's personal email 6 hours before she left the condo. Not to destroy Brennan, to protect herself. When a divorce involves a closely held company, the financial health of that company becomes relevant to asset distribution. Donovan deserved to know the state of the thing he had invested in. So did the IRS, which had also received a copy, flagged as a voluntary disclosure. By the time Brennan reached Donovan by phone, Donovan's accountants had already been through the report. Donovan was not angry. He was something worse. He was quiet and precise and spoke in short sentences. He said he would need Brennan to come in the following morning. He said he had retained separate counsel. He said not to touch anything in the company accounts until they had spoken. He hung up before Brennan could respond. Brennan sat in the half-empty condo for a long time after that call. He poured himself a drink. He looked at the space where Nora's grandmother's dining table had been. He had eaten at that table 100 times. He had never once asked where it came from. He tried Courtney next. She answered on the second ring. He explained the situation, not all of it. The divorce, the documents, the call from Donovan. He said he might need to stay at her place for a bit while he sorted things out. There was a pause on her end, a long pause. "Brennan," she said carefully, "I think you should know that this is moving a lot faster than I was expecting things to move. I know, but, and I think I should be honest with you." Another pause. "I've been offered a position in Austin. I wasn't going to bring it up yet, but with all this happening, I think I'm going to take it. I think it's the right time for a fresh start." Brennan stared at the wall. "You're leaving Nashville." "I accepted this morning," she said. "I was going to tell you Thursday." She said she was sorry. She said it genuinely, which somehow made it worse. They stayed on the phone for another 4 minutes, during which it became abundantly clear that Courtney had been managing her own exit timeline with considerably more forethought than he had been applying to anything. She wished him well. She meant it. She hung up. Brennan Holt sat in the hollow of his own condo with a glass of whiskey, no wife, no business partner, no mistress, and no dining table. The room was so quiet he could hear the couple in the unit above him moving around. He heard a child laugh through the ceiling. He looked at the bare floor where the table had been and thought, with a clarity that came too late to be useful, that he couldn't remember the last time he had asked Nora anything about her day that wasn't purely transactional. The next weeks were not kind to him. The meeting with Donovan lasted 3 hours and ended with Donovan's lawyers sending a formal letter of demand for a forensic audit of the company accounts. Gerald, who was the emotional center of the partnership, and who had always privately adored Nora, did not come to Brennan's defense. Gerald came to the meeting in a suit that suggested preparation, said almost nothing, and left with Donovan's lawyers rather than walking out alongside Brennan, which was its own kind of verdict. Patricia Greaves was, as advertised, deeply unpleasant to Brennan's attorney. The condo negotiations took 6 weeks. Because Nora had documentation of the premarital down payment and a clean paper trail, she walked away with 62% of the equity. The remainder of the joint account was split, after legal fees, in a way that left Brennan considerably less liquid than he had been. The development in Germantown, his legacy, as he had called it, was delayed indefinitely pending the audit. Nora, by then, was in Atlanta. She spent the first month at Renata's, sleeping in a room with yellow curtains and waking up to the sound of Renata's children getting ready for school. She found that she liked it. She liked the noise of a house that was actually inhabited. She started running in the mornings, something she hadn't done since college. She called her mother and talked for an hour, and then called again, 2 days later because there was more to say. She had begun working full-time for a small private equity firm based in Atlanta. A role she had quietly applied to and accepted before she ever got on the plane. The salary was higher than anything she had made in Nashville. The commute was a 20-minute drive through streets she was only beginning to learn. She bought a small house in Decatur, Georgia, with a front porch and 2 pecan trees in the backyard, and a kitchen with more counter space than she knew what to do with. She put her grandmother's dining table in the kitchen. It looked right there, the way things look when they finally end up exactly where they were supposed to be. She did not have a second story. She did not have a twist that would satisfy the people who wanted her to have orchestrated something operatic. What she had done was quieter than that and, in its own way, more complete. She had documented everything, filed everything, and left without a scene. She had not tried to humiliate Brennan. She had simply made it impossible for him to revise the story later. Brennan, to his credit, did not try to contact her after the divorce was finalized. She had anticipated this might be difficult, but he surprised her. The decree was signed in September. She received a single text from him that same evening. Not begging, not angry, just, "I'm sorry it ended this way." She read it twice. She did not respond. There was nothing in her that wanted to open that door again, not even a crack. She thought about that sometimes, in the first year. Whether she should feel angrier than she did or sadder. She had loved Brennan, she was sure of that. She had loved the version of him that had shown up at that fundraiser with his smile and his energy. The version that called her at 11 p.m. just to tell her something funny that had happened at dinner. That man had existed. He had also made a series of choices that gradually replaced him with someone she didn't recognize and hadn't agreed to marry. So she mourned that man, in the private way that people mourn things they cannot talk about openly. And then she put the mourning somewhere manageable and went on. The pecan trees dropped their fruit in October. She didn't know what to do with pecans. So she asked her neighbor, an older woman named Dory, who had lived in the house next door for 30 years, and who brought over a jar of homemade pepper jelly the week Nora moved in. Dory taught her to make a butter pecan cake from a recipe that had been in her family since her grandmother's time. Nora made it badly the first time and adequately the second time and, by November, rather well. She brought one to the office. Her colleagues ate the entire thing by noon. She made another for Renata's family at Thanksgiving. She sat at a table full of people who had known her before Nashville, who remembered the version of her that existed before she had spent 3 years making herself smaller to fit inside someone else's life. And she ate too much, and laughed at things that were not especially funny, and went home full, and slightly tired and profoundly, unexpectedly grateful. She was 31 years old. She had her grandmother's table and her credit union account, and 2 pecan trees and a house that was hers, and a job that used every part of her brain. She had started running 4 mornings a week and had signed up for a pottery class on Saturday afternoons, which she was terrible at in a way that she found, inexplicably, very freeing. She had everything she needed and nothing she didn't. There is a kind of woman who gets called quiet, right up until the moment people realize she was never quiet at all. She was simply paying attention, cataloging everything, waiting for the moment when patience would become the most precise and devastating instrument available to her. Brennan Holt had been certain. He was the architect of their life together. He had not understood that the woman managing the foundation had been reading the blueprints longer than he had, and had simply been waiting. With lavender sachets in the drawer and salmon in the refrigerator, and her grandmother's table in the center of a room that was already, in all the ways that mattered, hers. Some people believe that justice has to be loud to be real, that it has to be a reckoning, a confrontation, a moment of public accounting where the wrongdoer finally sees his reflection clearly enough to flinch. But sometimes the most complete form of justice is a woman calmly folding her grandmother's silverware into a box, handing a document to an attorney, and getting on a plane before anyone thinks to stop her. She didn't need him to understand what he had lost. She already knew.